Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our presentation. My name is Cilia Santiago, and my partner is Anne Sloan. Today, we will discuss the relationship between student attendance and academic achievement through the lens of a correlational research design. We will explain what correlation research is, what is it used, its strengths and limitations, sampling strategies, and how it applies to educational research. Our presentation is organized into three main sections. First, we will explain the foundation of correlational research and why research use this non-experimental design. Next, we will discuss methodology, including settings, variables, and sampling techniques. Finally, we will review an example from educational research and discuss how attendance data can help predict student outcomes. Correlational research is a quantitative, non experimental design used to examine relationships between variables. Unlike experimental research, the researchers does not manipulate variables or assign participants to groups. Instead, existing data are analyzed to determine whether variables are related. In our example, we're examining whether students' attendance is associated with academic achievement. Researchers chose correlational design when it would be unethical or impractical to manipulate variables. For example, we cannot require some students to miss school simply to study the effects of absenteeism. Instead, we analyze naturally occurring data. That this design helps researchers identify patterns, make predictions, and provide information that can support educational decision making and intervention planning. Correlational research can be conducted in a variety of educational settings, including elementary school, secondary schools, universities, districts, and state education systems. Data often come from existing records such as attendance reports, standardized assessments, report cards, and graduation records. These large datasets make correlational research particularly valuable for educational leaders. In this study, attendance served as an independent predictor variable. Attendance may be measured as the percentage of days attended or the number of absences. Academic achievement served as the dependent or the outcome variable and may be measured using state assessment scores, GPA, reading levels, or mathematical performance. Researchers analyze the relationship between these variables to determine whether attendance is associated with achievement outcomes. Now I will transfer the presentation to my partner, Anne.
Moving into the methodology phase of our presentation, let's look at why researchers choose a correlational design when investigating attendance and achievement. To begin with, this framework provides strong ecological validity. Because we look at students in their natural everyday educational environments, our findings mirror real world student dynamics rather than simulated settings. Secondly, it's completely ethically sound. In education, we cannot ethically or practically manipulate a student's attendance schedule for an experiment. This design allows for us to study the variables without disrupting the student's learning. It's also resource efficient, capitalizing on high volume administrative data that districts already collect. This efficiency gives us large scale potential to analyze entire student populations. Ultimately, this design provides powerful forecasting value by identifying at risk cohorts early in the school year, serving as a reliable hypothesis engine for future school interventions. While the strengths are significant, rigorous research requires us to confront the inherent constraints of a non experimental design. The central rule here is that correlation is not causation. A high correlation between missing school and lower test scores tell us a link exists, but it cannot prove that the absences directly caused the lower scores. The reason for this limitation is the presence of confounding variables. In educational settings, variables such as socioeconomic status, home learning environments, or parental involvement can influence both attendance patterns and academic outcomes simultaneously. Because we lack experimental control, we cannot isolate these variables completely, meaning that we must interpret our relational pathways as predictive rather than definitive cause and effect. To execute the design effectively, researchers must select an appropriate sampling strategy. We broadly divide these into probability and non-probability approaches. Probability methods focus on representation and give all students an equal chance of selection. These include simple random sampling, stratified sampling by demographic subgroups, and cluster or systematic sampling across school sites. On the other hand, non-probability methods target specific educational needs. Convenient sampling relies on readily accessible classrooms, while purposeless setting allows researchers to hand select specific groups, such as chronically absent cohorts, to observe narrow trends. Choosing between these approaches directly impacts how well the study's findings can be generalized. For a district-wide study on attendance and academic outcomes, the strategic recommendation of stratified random sampling is recommended. We consider this the standard for excellence in educational research because it deliberately splits the student population into district strata, such as grade level, socioeconomic statuses, or racial demographics, before sampling begins. This method guarantees total representation, ensuring the smaller or marginalized student groups are not erased by a simple lottery method. By capturing the true diversity of the district, we mitigate sampling bias, lower our margin of error, and drastically increase the generalizability of our findings when applying them to large-scale district policies.
Correlational studies are designed to answer questions about relationships between variables. Rather than asking whether one variable causes another, researchers ask whether variables are related and how strong those relationships may be. These questions often focus on prediction and association. The examples shown here illustrate typical correlation research questions. Researchers may investigate the relationship between attendance and reading achievement, attendance and mathematics proficiency, or whether attendance patterns in early grades can predict future outcomes such as graduation rates. These questions help educators identify factors associated with student success. A recent study by Gottfried examined the relationship between student absenteeism and academic achievement. The researcher analyzed existing educational data and found that chronic absenteeism was associated with lower academic performance. This study exemplifies correlational research because no variable were manipulated. Instead, naturally occurring attendance and achievement data were examined to identify the patterns and relationships. Research consistently shows that students with higher attendance rates tend to earn higher grades and perform better on standardized assessments. Students who miss significant amount of instructional time often experience achievement gaps that become more difficult to overcome over time. These findings highlight the importance of attendance as a key indicator of success.
To conclude our presentation, let's synthesize what a correlational design brings to educational research. Ultimately, this framework effectively bridges the gap between raw institutional data and the actionable student success outcomes. It provides these insights without the ethical concerns or practical costs of disrupting classroom instruction with experimental designs. The bottom line is that attendance is more than just an administrative metric. It serves as the baseline for student achievement. By utilizing correlational data, educational leaders can design targeted, data-driven policies that address chronic absenteeism at its root, helping to close achievement gaps and foster long-term academic equity. For those interested in exploring these methodologies or the topic of absenteeism further, we've compiled a list of foundational resources. For core research design, we highly recommend the text by Creswell and Creswell, as well as Frankel, Wallen, and Hayun. To track ongoing empirical data regarding student attendance patterns and academic achievement gaps, prominent journals such as Educational Researcher and the American Educational Research Journal regularly publish contemporary peer-reviewed studies. Additionally, the Attendance Works Research Hub is an excellent centralized platform for assessing localized tools and field data. We would like to thank you for your time and attention today. As we transition into open discussion, we'd like to leave you with a few reflective questions to consider. How can your specific campuses shift from viewing attendance as a compliance metric to treating it as a diagnostic tool for student support? And given the limitations of regarding causal conclusions and correlational data, what steps can we take as researchers to ensure our findings are communicated accurately to policymakers? We will now open the floor to any questions, comments, or insights you may have. Thank you very much.